In a tangled web of mystery and suspicion, a police officer finds himself at the center of a shocking incident.
Police department! Police department!
The evidence paints a haunting picture. A shot to the head, a dubious suicide label. Yet, against all odds, his wife miraculously survives, becoming the beacon of hope for uncovering the truth. But despair grips all who seek justice when she awakens with no memory of the fateful event. As the case threatens to be swept aside, a tenacious quest for answers unfolds, fueled by an unwavering determination to unravel the enigma surrounding this dark and clandestine affair. Georgia, situated in the southeastern region of the United States, known for its rich history, vibrant culture, and stunning landscapes, Georgia offers a unique blend of southern charm, modern cities, and breathtaking natural beauty. With Atlanta as its bustling capital and largest city, Georgia is a state that effortlessly combines urban sophistication with the tranquility of the countryside. But one day in 2016, an incident shook the community of Griffin when the wife of a Griffin police officer miraculously survived a gunshot to the head from his service weapon. The officer in question, Matthew Boynton, faced severe consequences following the incident, but not directly related to the shooting itself.
She told me she loved me, but she did it. What am I kids gonna do?
On July 28, 2017, Boynton found himself arrested for providing false information to his department regarding the possession of a gym bag containing his estranged wife Jessica's personal belongings. Tragically, Jessica was in a coma during this time, and she had packed the bag with the intention of leaving Boynton, planning to take their 2 young children with her. Initially, Boynton denied having any knowledge of the bag's whereabouts. However, it was his then-girlfriend who provided a crucial tip that led to the discovery of the bag. She notified Will Sanders, and he purchased the bag from Boynton's girlfriend and promptly handed it over to the Griffin Police Department. In the face of this evidence, Boynton eventually confessed to his actions. As the investigation unfolded, authorities also examined Sanders' involvement in the matter. Ultimately, Jessica's shooting was deemed a suicide, despite some concerns raised by her doctor at the Atlanta Trauma Center. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, cleared Boynton of any involvement in the shooting. However, after Boynton and Jessica finalized their divorce, Jessica filed a complaint against Boynton with the Griffin Police Department, accusing him of refusing to return her belongings. During the course of the investigation, statements were taken from both Boynton and Jessica. Boynton vehemently claimed not to possess any of Jessica's belongings, even signing a statement to that effect. Griffin police officer Matthew Boynton was questioned by his own department, including Lieutenant Karen Yancey and Sergeant John Hayes, in an interrogation room. The purpose of the interview was not an internal investigation, but a criminal investigation. Boynton had been arrested for providing a false statement to his department regarding possession of a gym bag that belonged to his now former wife, Jessica. During the interview, Boynton was read his Miranda rights, and Yancey reminded him that anything he said could be used against him in a court of law. Boynton initially claimed that he didn't have any of Jessica's belongings and that everything had been returned to her. However, Yancey presented a photo of the bag in question and asked Boynton if he recognized it. Boynton acknowledged that it was the bag Jessica had allowed him to use for his gym items when they were together. Let's take a look at how everything unfolded during the interview. During the course of the investigation, Matthew was questioned about any belongings of his wife, Jessica, that he might have had in his possession. He brought up a missing Nike bag and suggested that it could potentially be in storage. Interestingly, it was revealed that Matthew himself owned a Nike bag that was typically used for their gym gear. This information raised intrigue and indicated the possibility of further significance. Upon delving deeper, investigators discovered that Matthew's stepfather had placed the bag in storage but its contents had not been thoroughly examined in recent times. These findings added a new layer of importance to the ongoing investigation, prompting the need for further scrutiny and exploration. The detectives continued their relentless questioning, specifically honing in on the mysterious disappearance of the Nike bag. They suggested the possibility that it may have been inadvertently misplaced during the process of moving. However, doubts persisted regarding whether Matthew possessed more information about the bag's whereabouts than he was willing to divulge. The detectives recognized the potential significance of the bag as a potential source of vital evidence and were resolute in their determination to locate it. Their unwavering focus on finding the bag underscored its potential value in advancing the progress of the investigation. Eventually, it was revealed that Matthew's new girlfriend was in possession of Jessica's Nike bag, shedding light on the reason behind all the inquiries. Overwhelmed by emotions, Matthew was unable to hold back his distress as he contemplated the far-reaching consequences of the investigation on his children and his career. Despite his vulnerable state, the detective remained persistent, relentlessly probing Matthew about his failure to mention the Nike bag earlier. In an attempt to defend himself, Matthew began offering excuses, desperately trying to justify his previous omissions and inconsistencies. The room grew increasingly tense as the weight of the situation, combined with the detective's unyielding questioning, created a palpable atmosphere of tension and unease. Matthew's deep concern for his career and the welfare of his children became evident as he contemplated his actions and recognized his failure to fulfill his obligations. Or is this just a facade to portray in front of the police? As the interrogation finally came to an end, Matthew was left alone to grapple with his thoughts and emotions. However, his distressing situation took another devastating turn when he received the disheartening news that he had been relieved of his duties as a police officer. This development only added to the weight of his already overwhelming circumstances, leaving him in a state of profound despair. In a perplexing turn of events, Jessica awoke to find herself afflicted with amnesia, unable to recall the details of the shooting incident. Astonishingly, despite evidence to the contrary, the authorities inexplicably classified the shooting as an attempted suicide, abruptly closing the case. This puzzling conclusion left numerous questions unanswered and unresolved, leaving a lingering sense of uncertainty and a need for further investigation into the incident. Following a resilient battle, Jessica emerged from a 3-week coma and is now in a stable condition, showcasing an incredible recovery. However, her memory continues to be impaired, leaving a significant gap in her recollection of the events that unfolded during that period. Despite this setback, Jessica's overall health has improved, and she is gradually regaining her strength while adjusting to her restored well-being. Nevertheless, the path to recovering her lost memories remains challenging and uncertain, posing a daunting journey for Jessica and all those involved in the investigation. The case at hand continues to hold an air of mystery, with indications that a wealth of undisclosed information lies beneath the surface of the current findings. The ongoing investigation has only begun to scratch the veneer, leaving behind a multitude of unanswered questions and intricate complexities that yearn to be unraveled. As the narrative unfolds, it becomes increasingly evident that the true nature of the events involves a web of interconnected layers, still concealed, intensifying the captivating enigma that surrounds this perplexing case. During the questioning conducted by a GBI agent, Matthew Boynton vehemently denied any change of clothing on the night of the incident. However, compelling evidence emerged that directly contradicted his statement. The footage captured by an officer's body camera revealed Matthew wearing a distinctive red jacket at the scene, while surveillance footage from a Walmart later that same night depicted him in entirely different attire. These glaring discrepancies cast a shadow of doubt over Matthew's veracity and potentially implicate him further in the unfolding events. The case surrounding the alleged shooting of Jessica, Matthews' former wife, remains shrouded in mystery, giving rise to a multitude of perplexing questions. Contrary to Matthews' initial report, it has been discovered that Jessica was not shot in the head. Instead, the evidence strongly suggests that she sustained a blow to the head from a blunt object, as there was a conspicuous absence of bullet wounds or gunshot residue on her hands. This startling revelation adds to the intrigue and raises significant concerns about the accuracy of Matthews' account and his potential involvement in the incident. Further investigation has revealed significant inconsistencies between Matthews' reported timeline of events and witness testimony, surveillance footage, and other evidence. Moreover, Matthews' behavior during the investigation, including his falsehoods about changing his clothes and washing his hands, as well as his subsequent theft of Jessica's property and subsequent lies about it, further heightens suspicions about his overall credibility. Despite the presence of glaring discrepancies and compelling evidence to the contrary, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation shockingly closed the case, deeming it a suicide. This decision completely disregarded the crucial information that emerged, including Jessica's survival from the incident with a severe head injury and her subsequent memory loss. The mishandling of the investigation, coupled with the potential for a cover-up, reveals a distressing lack of justice for Jessica. In response to these deeply concerning circumstances, a petition has gained momentum, calling for the involvement of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to assume control of the case. The petition advocates for a thorough and comprehensive examination of all leads and evidence, aiming to ensure that justice is served for Jessica, who has been denied the closure she deserves. Additionally, the petition seeks to protect others from potential harm if Matthew is indeed responsible for the incident. Given the pressing urgency and profound significance of this matter, it is imperative that swift and appropriate action is taken to uncover the truth, rectify the failures of the initial investigation, and provide a fair and equitable resolution for Jessica. The pursuit of justice in this case must not waver until the full truth is revealed and those responsible are held accountable. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Matthew is guilty or innocent?
In the glow of her prime and on the cusp of a joyous union, a vibrant young court reporter embraced the pinnacle of happiness. But fate had a cruel twist in store, shattering her idyllic existence in a single fateful night.
Well, Sacramento County's oldest cold case has finally been solved. 52 years later, after a county court reporter was murdered, authorities say they know who the suspected killer is.
The enchanting tale of her life morphed into a harrowing nightmare as she fell victim to a savage and senseless crime that would lead investigators searching for nearly half a century. Prepare to delve into the haunting chronicle of Nancy Marie Benelak, a story that will grip your soul as we navigate the depths of tragedy, seeking answers and justice for a life cut tragically short. This story takes us in the 1970s in Sacramento, California, where people lived a peaceful and normal life. But that peaceful life quickly turned into a tragedy for Nancy and her family. Nancy Marie Benelak was born on June 13, 1942, in Nevada, San Bernardino County, California. She grew up in Grass, Nevada with her parents, Brian Addison Benelak and Elaine Laverne Kessler, and had a sister named Linda. Nancy attended Hennessy School and later Nevada Union High School. After graduating, she went to beauty school and worked as a hairstylist in Hawaii for some time. Later, she trained as a court reporter and worked in the Sacramento District Court. Nancy lived alone with her cat in an apartment complex on Arden Way, Bell Street in Sacramento. She had a happy life and was engaged to Ferris Salami, who worked as the chief public defender in the same court. At the age of 28, Nancy's life seemed perfect. She was happily engaged to Salami, and they were planning to get married on November 28, 1970. However, tragedy struck on October 25th, 1970. Nancy and Salami went out for dinner after work and returned to Nancy's apartment afterwards. Since Nancy was exhausted, she fell asleep while Salami was still there. It was late at night when Salami decided to leave. He checked the time, which was 11:30 p.m., and followed Nancy's usual practice of leaving the glass door slightly open for her cat. Unfortunately, these two decisions would have dire consequences. The next morning, Nancy's co-workers noticed that she was absent from work, which was unusual because she always gave prior notice if she couldn't make it. Concerned, one of her co-workers called Nancy's son, Jack, to check on her at her apartment. Jack knocked on the door multiple times but received no response. He realized something was wrong and hurried to the building manager to explain the situation. After some discussion, the manager agreed to open Nancy's door. What they discovered inside was a horrifying sight they would never forget. Nancy was lying lifeless in a pool of her own blood. She had suffered multiple stab wounds all over her body, and her head was nearly decapitated. The building manager and Jack immediately called the police, who arrived at the scene shortly after. The question on everyone's mind, including the investigators, was who could have committed such a heinous crime. Nancy's sister Linda, who was already worried about her sister's absence, received a call from her husband, Tom, urging her to come home immediately. Linda sensed something was terribly wrong. Tom broke the devastating news of Nancy's death to her, and also informed Nancy's mother, who was working on Lytton Hill. The police collected some evidence from the crime scene, but it was not sufficient. They reviewed tapes from the area surrounding the crime scene, but realized a thorough investigation was necessary. Detectives found blood all over the crime scene. Mickey Lynx, the lead detective, believed that the assailant used tape to conceal their fingerprints since none were found. Back then, gloves weren't as readily available as they are now. The investigators also discovered a blood trail, indicating that the killer had been injured. The trail led from the balcony on the second floor down to the sidewalk, then to two other apartment buildings, and finally ending in the parking lot. This led them to believe that the killer had left the apartment in a vehicle. Further examination of Nancy's body revealed over 30 stab wounds. The investigators determined that she was murdered between 11:30 p.m. when Salami left and in the early hours of October 26, 1970. Despite interviewing more than 500 people, the investigators couldn't find any suspects. Nancy had no known enemies, so this was unexpected. However, one of Nancy's neighbors, Alice Sylvia, reported hearing a scream and footprints around 1:30 a.m. This was believed to be the time of the murder. The crime scene investigation provided some insights. The perpetrator was believed to be a young and agile person who entered Nancy's room by climbing up the second-story balcony through the open glass door. There were signs of a struggle, evident from the wounds on Nancy's arms. The investigators believed that the killer got injured during the altercation, which explained the blood trail. Unfortunately, at that time, there was no advanced DNA technology available. The investigators could only determine the killer's blood group, which wasn't enough to solve the case. The years went by and the case remained unsolved. Nancy's friends and family sought justice, but without technological advancements, there was little progress. 7 months before Nancy's death, another woman named Judith Ann Hikari, a registered nurse, was also murdered in close proximity to Nancy's apartment. The police began connecting the two cases due to similarities. Judith, too, was engaged and worked in a professional field. Detectives speculated that both women could have been victims of the infamous Zodiac Killer, a serial killer who operated during the 1960s and 70s. The Zodiac Killer targeted couples in secluded areas near San Francisco and often left behind signs and coded messages to taunt the police. In these correspondences, he threatened to carry out killing sprees and bombings if his messages weren't published. Some of the letters contained secret codes or puzzles where the killer claimed that he was gathering victims as slaves for the afterlife. Out of the 4 codes he created, 2 remained unsolved, and only 1 was cracked in 2020. Although the Zodiac stopped sending written messages around 1974, the unique nature of the case has garnered international attention that has endured over the years. The San Francisco Police Department classified the case as inactive in April 2004, but reopened it before March 2007. The investigation is also ongoing in the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa and Solano counties. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open file on the Zodiac murders since 1969. However, despite the similarities, there was no concrete evidence linking the Zodiac killer to Nancy and Judith's cases. To this day, the identity of the Zodiac killer remains unknown, and Judith Hikari's case remains unsolved. In 2004, after 34 years, a DNA profile was developed from the blood found at the crime scene using new technology. However, when the profile was uploaded to the DNA database, there were no matches with any known offenders. The case went cold once again, and Nancy's family started losing hope. Nearly 5 decades after Nancy's death, in November 2019, detectives from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Cold Case Team and the District Attorney's Office launched a new forensic genetic genealogy investigation. This technology had previously been successful in identifying other criminals, such as the Golden State Killer or the No-Cal rapist. The DNA profile developed in 2004 was uploaded to a genealogy website to trace potential relatives of the suspect. It took 3 years of waiting, but finally, with the help of a relative who provided their DNA, the detectives were able to identify the killer after over 50 years. On July 21st, 2022, Nancy's killer was identified as Richard John Davis. He lived in the same apartment complex as Nancy and had planned her murder. Richard John Davis, who was 27 years old at the time of the crime, resided in an apartment opposite Nancy's. He could easily observe Nancy's movements from his own apartment. Detective Mickey Lynx, now retired, revealed in a press conference that Davis had premeditated Nancy's murder. He broke into her apartment through the partially opened glass, covering his fingers with tape, indicating careful planning. The motive behind Davis's actions remains unclear, but detectives speculate that he may have had feelings for Nancy and became enraged when he learned of her upcoming marriage. There were no known disputes or conversations between Davis and Nancy, according to the extensive interviews conducted with 500 people. Davis and his roommate provided strong alibis for each other during the month after Nancy's death. There were no visible wounds on Davis's arms or hands during the investigation. The information regarding Davis's roommate and their current status is not provided. Presenting a false alibi is a serious crime, and it is important to determine if the roommate was questioned about it after it was found out who the murderer was. Davis had no prior convictions except for a charge of driving under the influence, which is why his DNA was not found in the criminal database. He lived freely in Sacramento while Nancy's family and her fiancé mourned her loss, holding on to the hope that her killer would be brought to justice. Unfortunately, Nancy's fiancé, Salami, passed away from leukemia in 2014, never seeing the day the killer was identified. Davis himself passed away on November 2nd, 1997, at the age of 54, due to illness related to alcoholism. If he were alive, he would have been charged with first-degree premeditated murder. Detective Lynx expressed her sadness during the press conference, acknowledging that the legal justice could not be fully served. She hoped that Nancy's sister, Linda, and her husband, Tom, could find some peace in finally knowing the identity of Nancy's killer. Linda, overcome with emotion, listened to the speech in tears. Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert commended the dedicated work of the investigators, emphasizing that justice can sometimes lie dormant for years before being awakened. She expressed gratitude that Nancy was never forgotten and praised the relentless pursuit of truth. Linda Cox, Nancy's sister, expressed her appreciation to the officials for solving the case, admitting that she had almost lost hope of ever finding justice for Nancy. This tragic tale unveils how a life can swiftly fade away when we least anticipate it. Fortunately, in today's era, advanced technologies exist to identify and apprehend perpetrators of heinous crimes. The advent of DNA testing on cold cases has undoubtedly instilled fear in the hearts of countless murderers and rapists, compelling them to run scared, knowing that justice may be closing in. As we reflect upon this narrative, our hearts ache for the young woman who met such a cruel fate. The unimaginable fear and excruciating pain she endured during her final hours are truly harrowing. It is an atrocity beyond comprehension. While this tale evokes profound sadness, it also underscores the importance of our unwavering commitment to the pursuit of justice.
Prepare to be gripped by a chilling tale of resilience and unimaginable horror. Meet Lindsay Hawker, a woman whose lifelong pursuit of knowledge led her to Japan, where she sought to make a difference by teaching English. Little did she know that her noble mission would soon descend into a nightmarish ordeal. In this harrowing account, we delve into the story of Lindsay Hawker and the sinister man who would go to extreme lengths, even altering his own face, to elude capture. On March 24, 2007, something unsettling happened in Chiba, Japan. Lindsay Hawker, a 23-year-old woman from Coventry, England, disappeared without a trace. What followed was a 3-year-long search by the police. Lindsay was a beloved member of her community. She excelled in her studies and graduated with top honors in biology from the University of Leeds in 2006. Seeking some time off before pursuing her master's degree, she decided to travel. In October of the same year, she joined the Nova Teaching School and embarked on a journey to Japan, a beautiful country. Upon arriving in Japan, Lindsay was assigned to Koiwa, a district in Edogawa, Tokyo. To save on rent, she chose to live in Chiba, a city slightly further east, sharing an apartment with 2 fellow Nova school teachers who soon became her friends. Despite the distance, Lindsay stayed connected with her family and boyfriend in England through various means like Facebook, WhatsApp, Skype, texts, and calls. She relished her time in Japan, and everything appeared to be going smoothly. 6 months into her stay in Japan, in March 2007, Lindsay had a strange encounter. After finishing work, she went to Chiba Station where she usually kept her bicycle. While unlocking her bike, a man approached her from behind and said, "You are my English teacher." Lindsay found this odd because she was certain he wasn't one of her students. Politely, she ended the conversation and hopped on her bicycle to ride back to her apartment. To her surprise, the man started following her. When she increased her speed, he ran after her. While trying to escape, he bombarded her with questions like, "Where are you from?" and "Where did you study?" Lindsay couldn't shake off the man, and eventually she stopped her bike outside her apartment. Once again, he approached her. He asked if she could give him English lessons because he felt he needed help with the language. He suggested meeting at a public cafe where she would feel comfortable, and he promised to pay generously per hour. Lindsay declined his offer, explaining that she was too busy with work and barely had any free time. The man seemed disappointed, but accepted her answer. Then he asked if she could give him a glass of water because he was thirsty from chasing her. Reluctantly, Lindsay agreed and let him into her apartment. She wanted her housemates to see his face in case they encountered him again, and she also wanted to show that she wasn't living alone, hoping it would deter the man if he had any harmful intentions. Once inside the apartment, the man persisted in asking Lindsay for English lessons, but this time he offered to pay her 3,500 yen per hour. Tempted by the easy money, Lindsay reluctantly agreed, and they scheduled a meeting at a coffee shop a few days later. The man seemed grateful for her acceptance. Before leaving, he grabbed a pen and a scrap of paper and hastily scribbled something. To Lindsay's surprise, he handed her a note with a drawing of herself and his name and phone number. The note read, Tatsuya Ichihashi, phone 047-356-7238. Tatsuya, a 28-year-old man originally from Ichikawa but living in Chiba, had ambitions to become a medical doctor like his father. However, when he was denied further education opportunities, he settled for a degree in horticulture from the University of Chiba in 2005. After graduating, he didn't make any effort to find a job and instead relied on a monthly allowance of 100,000 yen from his parents. While Tatsuya had no previous criminal record, he was once suspected of theft and assault. Allegedly, he had attacked a woman during a robbery, but his father paid her 1 million yen to resolve the matter outside of court. Tatsuya was often described as a loner with a strong interest in physical fitness. He regularly visited his local gym and cycled more than 25 kilometers every day. On Saturday, March 24, 2007, Lindsay and Tatsuya had their first English lesson at a nearby coffee shop. CCTV footage captured them conversing in the queue while ordering their drinks. Lindsay didn't appear visibly uncomfortable, but she made sure to maintain some distance between them. If Tatsuya got too close, she would step away. The lesson lasted a little over an hour, and nothing appeared unusual during that time. After the English lesson, Tatsuya told Lindsay that he had forgotten to bring the payment and invited her to his apartment, which was just half a mile away, to collect it. Lindsay agreed, and they took a taxi together. Arriving at Tatsuya's home, Lindsay asked the driver if he could wait since she needed to go to work that afternoon. The driver agreed, and both Lindsay and Tatsuya entered the building. However, as minutes passed by without Lindsay returning, the driver assumed she had changed her plans and left. Lindsay didn't show up for work that afternoon, and her roommates grew worried when she still hadn't returned home after several hours. They decided to contact the police and report her missing, but unfortunately the police didn't take it seriously at first. When Lindsay failed to check in at work on Monday, the Nova Teaching School contacted her parents in England to inform them. Alarmed by the situation, Lindsay's parents called the police again. During the investigation at her apartment, her roommate shared the information about the strange man she had a lesson with and handed over the sketch with his details. On Monday, March 26th at 5:40 p.m., 2 police officers were sent to Tatsuya's apartment. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. However, the kind neighbors allowed the officers to access their balcony to peek into Tatsuya's living room. The lights were off, but they could see someone inside. They also noticed that Tatsuya had moved his detachable bathtub from the bathroom to the balcony, which seemed suspicious. The officers suspected that Lindsay might be held captive in Tatsuya's apartment and called for backup. After 3 hours, 9 officers had gathered, and they began planning a raid on the apartment. However, as they were preparing to storm in, Tatsuya unexpectedly opened the door barefoot, carrying a backpack. Seizing the opportunity, he swiftly passed through the 9 officers. They managed to grab his backpack, but unfortunately, Tatsuya escaped into the darkness of the night. During the search of Tatsuya's apartment, the police made a horrifying discovery. Lindsay Hawker's lifeless body was found naked in the bathtub on the balcony. Tatsuya had covered her completely with a mixture of soil and sand, leaving only her right hand visible. Upon further investigation, they found that Tatsuya had added a substance to the soil to accelerate decomposition, and he had placed flower seeds on top to disguise it as a flower bed. He had also shaved Lindsay's hair off. Among the items found in the apartment were multiple women's wigs, indicating that Tatsuya may have been a cross-dresser. Speculation arose, suggesting he might have killed Lindsay to use her hair for a wig, but this theory was never confirmed. By the following morning, Tatsuya had become a wanted man throughout Japan. The police distributed wanted posters and aired his image on various news outlets multiple times a day, hoping for leads. However, despite these efforts, no significant breakthroughs occurred. After a couple of weeks with no solid leads, the police resorted to releasing photoshopped images of Tatsuya wearing wigs in case he was disguising himself in drag. Unfortunately, these attempts also proved fruitless, and the investigation went cold. 2 months after Lindsay's tragic death, her parents arrived in Japan to help raise awareness and put pressure on the authorities to find Tatsuya. Frustrated with the progress of the police investigation, Lindsay's father went as far as befriending members of the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia, and offering them bottles of whiskey in exchange for their assistance in locating his daughter's killer. The media turned their focus on the Japanese police and began questioning their competence. How could 9 officers fail to apprehend a single man when they were about to raid his home? Why did it take them a month to question crucial witnesses? Furthermore, the revelation that the wanted picture of Tatsuya was 7 years outdated only added to the public scrutiny. The situation escalated into public arguments between the police and Lindsay Hawker's family, prompting extensive coverage from both British and Japanese media. Meanwhile, Tatsuya managed to travel across the country, moving from Aomori in the north to Okinawa, the southernmost island. In the years 2008 to 2009, Tatsuya resided in Osaka, around 250 miles west of Tokyo. He survived by sleeping in internet cafes and working on construction sites, saving up money for plastic surgery to alter his appearance. However, even before undergoing surgery, he had already mutilated his face through self-inflicted injuries. He used a knife to remove moles, cut off part of his lower lip with scissors, and even sewed a thread through his nose to change its shape. As desperation grew, the police raised the cash reward from 1 million yen to 10 million yen and released more photoshopped images suggesting that Tatsuya had likely undergone plastic surgery. In October 2009, a plastic surgeon informed the police that he believed he had recently operated on Tatsuya. The surgeon provided a before and after photo, which was promptly released to the public. The plan to alter Tatsuya's appearance through plastic surgery worked, and he managed to evade capture for a while. However, his luck ran out when a colleague on the construction site where he was working recognized him and alerted the police. In a state of panic, Tatsuya hatched a plan to escape to Okinawa and find refuge in an abandoned bunker on a remote island, a tactic he had used before when he felt the police were getting too close. On November 10, 2009, Tatsuya attempted to make his escape from Osaka's ferry port, hoping to remain unnoticed during the 3-day ferry journey. Unfortunately for him, a staff member at the port recognized him and immediately alerted security, who called the police. When questioned, Tatsuya knew he couldn't deny his identity any longer and admitted, "Yes, it is me, Tatsuya Ichihashi." He was promptly arrested on the spot. Initially charged with abandoning a body, he later faced additional charges of rape and murder. On July 4, 2011, Tatsuya Ichihashi's trial commenced. Given the nature of the crime, the deliberation was brief, and he confessed to luring Lindsay into his home, raping her and strangling her out of fear that her screams would alert the neighbors. The media focused on speculation about how the court would punish him, as Japan still practiced the death penalty. However, on July 21, 2009, Tatsuya received a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 10 years before being eligible for parole. Although many campaigned for him to receive the death penalty, it was not imposed in his case. In 2012, Tatsuya appealed his sentence, arguing that it was too harsh and claiming that Lindsay's death was accidental, as he was trying to silence her screams. However, the Tokyo High Court upheld the original sentence. Tatsuya continued to inflict pain on the Hawker family by writing a book about his time on the run from his prison cell. The book gained popularity in Britain, selling over 100,000 copies. He offered Lindsay's parents the royalties, but they declined. The book's success led to its adaptation into a film called I Am Ichihashi, The Journal of a Killer. As of 2022, Tatsuya remains imprisoned, serving his sentence.
The peaceful and content life of a devout Christian family of 5 took an unforeseen turn one fateful night. In this remarkable tale, we'll delve into the extraordinary story of Amanda and Billy Cope and the profound impact it had on their family. Prepare to embark on a journey marked by a grievous miscarriage of justice, replete with unexpected plot twists and intricate complexities. Let's begin. It was November 29th, 2001, in Rock Hill, South Carolina, when 37-year-old Billy Cope discovered the lifeless body of his daughter, Amanda, in her bedroom during the early hours of the morning. At around 3 a.m., Billy abruptly woke up, sensing that something was amiss within his household. Notably, the hallway light was illuminated, despite his recollection of having turned it off before retiring to bed. His wife, Mary Sue, was away at her overnight job, leaving Billy alone with their 3 daughters, Amanda, aged 12, Jessica, aged 11, and Kyla, aged 7. Being a devoutly Christian family, they had foregone their usual Wednesday church service that night to assist Jessica with her math homework. Amanda, the caring older sister, had offered her help, and Billy consented to allow the girls to stay up until their task was complete. The youngest daughter, Kyla, had retired to bed at 9 p.m., while Billy stayed up with the 2 older girls until 1 a.m., assisting them with their schoolwork. Subsequently, everyone retired to bed, with Billy utilizing a CPAP breathing machine to manage his sleep apnea. Strangely, just 2 hours later, Billy was startled awake. In a drowsy state, he proceeded to check on his daughters. Finding Amanda's door closed, he speculated that she might have been the one to switch on the hallway light, possibly having risen for a drink of water. The door to the other bedroom was open, revealing a peaceful slumber of his 2 younger daughters. Feeling somewhat reassured, Billy returned to his bed, reattached his breathing machine, and promptly fell back asleep. The following morning, at 6 a.m., he was rudely awakened by the blaring of his alarm clock. He later mentioned that during the intermittent moments of sleep, he had dreamt about the rapture. In his dream, Jesus had come to gather his followers, and he witnessed Amanda being taken, while he was left behind, bidding her farewell with the words, "Bye, Daddy." Still shaken from the intensity of his dream, Billy hastened to check on his daughters. The sight of his younger girls still peacefully asleep in their beds initially brought him relief, but it was short-lived. When he attempted to open Amanda's door, it became entangled with the closet door, requiring force to gain entry. In that harrowing moment, he was confronted with an unbearable scene: Amanda's lifeless body lying motionless on her bed. As he reached out to touch her, he felt the chilling coldness, confirming his worst nightmare. In a state of shock, he covered her lifeless form and, overwhelmed with grief, dialed 911.
Is she breathing?
Oh, no, she's dead.
How,
She's cold as a cucumber. And
okay, you don't want to try to CPR or anything on her?
no, ma'am, she's dead. I mean, her mouth is completely shut. She's ice cold.
In his initial statement to the police, Billy Cope recounted that he woke up around 6 a.m., called out his daughter's name, and upon receiving no response, decided to check on her. It was during this check that he tragically discovered his daughter's lifeless body on the floor of her own bedroom and promptly called 911 for assistance. Based on the absence of signs of forced entry and what they perceived as a lack of emotional display, the police considered Cope a suspect. He underwent 2 interviews before being released, only to be brought in for a 3rd session later that same night, which extended into the following morning and ultimately resulted in Cope's imprisonment. Throughout more than 24 hours of persistent interrogation, Cope maintained his innocence, despite voluntarily waiving his Miranda rights and offering to undergo a polygraph test on 5 separate occasions. Following an overnight stay in jail, he was subjected to a polygraph examination the next morning, which he successfully passed. However, the officers informed him that he had failed the polygraph, leading to the continuation of the interrogation. Astonished, devastated, and bewildered by the results, Cope questioned aloud whether it was possible to commit such a horrific crime and have no recollection of it, a notion that the interrogator had previously suggested. Overwhelmed, Cope broke down and confessed to the crime, stating, "I must have done it." He proceeded to provide a detailed account of how he molested and strangled his daughter. This initial confession was sealed. 2 days later, Cope provided the police with a second written confession in which his story had changed. He now claimed that he had raped and killed his daughter while dreaming about an ex-girlfriend who had undergone an abortion. In compliance with the police, Cope returned to the house to reenact the events of that tragic night. Subsequently, the police drafted a comprehensive, detailed narrative of the murder, which Cope signed, constituting his third confession. However, the evidence did not align with Cope's confessions. Dr. Maynard, the physician who performed Amanda's autopsy, disclosed the presence of bite marks on the child's right breasts, and semen was found in her pants, indicating evidence of sexual assault. Both samples were tested and did not match Cope. Instead, they matched James Sanders, a sex offender residing across the street who had previously committed similar crimes. Yet, within days of receiving the results, the police falsely informed Cope's wife that the semen matched her husband's perfectly. Desperate to extract another confession, the police went through extreme lengths, even wiring Cope's wife and sending her to jail. Nonetheless, Cope did not confess. Tragically, Cope's wife passed away during surgery, unaware of the deception that had torn their world apart. Despite a detailed confession lacking supporting evidence, the prosecutor accused Cope of conspiracy, alleging that he had exploited his daughter by involving Sanders. This accusation primarily relied on Cope's confession and the absence of signs of forced entry. During the trial, the prosecutors relied on a female friend of Cope's late wife as their primary source of evidence. She claimed to have received 2 handwritten notes from Cope confessing to the crime. However, Cope denied writing these notes, and it was determined that he did not have access to the materials used or match the handwriting attributed to him. Additionally, the credibility of the witness was questionable, as she had previously faced forgery charges, rendering this evidence inadmissible. To support his defense, Cope presented expert testimony from Dr. Sal Casson, who discussed false confessions. Dr. Casson argued that the interrogation techniques employed by the police were unethical and should be dismissed. Specifically, 5 inappropriate tactics were highlighted. False evidence. Officers falsely informed Cope that he had failed the polygraph despite him actually passing the test. Positive confrontation. Offers asserted their belief that Cope was guilty. Refusal to accept denial. Despite Cope's cooperation with the polygraph and waiver of an attorney, the officers disregarded his denial of guilt. Minimization. Officers suggested that the crime may have been accidental. Interrogation under duress. Cope was questioned while traumatized and fatigued. Dr. Casson referenced similar cases of false confessions, such as those of Peter Riley and Gary Gager, who confessed to crimes they did not commit after being falsely led to believe they were guilty due to polygraph results. However, the court ruled that these cases were irrelevant to the present trial and deemed the testimony inadmissible. Although Sanders had a history of committing rapes and killings in a manner similar to the victim in this case, the court refused to admit evidence of his previous crimes, as evidence of other crimes is typically not admissible to determine the defendant's character. The testimony of James Hilly, a convicted burglar, claimed to recognize Sanders' distinct voice from overhearing him in prison, bragging about getting away with raping and killing a young girl in the Rock Hill area. However, this testimony was deemed irrelevant since it did not provide specific details about the time or location of the alleged confession. In the end, prosecutors asserted that Cope knowingly permitted James Sanders, his neighbor, to enter his home with the intention of attacking his daughter. They further claimed that Cope himself had previously assaulted the girl. Consequently, both Cope and Sanders were convicted of murder and handed life sentences without the possibility of parole. Cope's defense attorneys contended that the prosecution had manipulated the evidence to wrongfully imprison an innocent man. They argued that Cope, who suffered from mental issues, was so emotionally devastated by his daughter's death that the investigators were able to exploit him into confessing to a crime he did not commit. However, the state Supreme Court upheld Cope's conviction in 2013, and the case was subsequently declined by the U.S. Supreme Court. Cope's defense attorney expressed their profound disappointment in their inability to secure his release from prison, considering him a married father of 3. In a statement shared on the Facebook page Free Billy Wayne Cope, they wrote, "Billy's death marks a sad end to a horrible miscarriage of justice." Prosecutors maintained that the Cope residence in Rock Hill was securely locked when 12-year-old Amanda was discovered strangled to death, suggesting that someone must have granted Sanders access. In response, the defense attorneys argued that the lock on the home's door could easily be manipulated with a credit card or driver's license. In a statement to the Daily News, Cope's defense team expressed their deep disappointment at their inability to save him from this tragic fate, considering it one of the most profound letdowns of their lives and careers. Cope passed away in prison at the age of 53 in 2017 due to natural causes, steadfastly maintaining his innocence until the end. The core issue in Cope's trial is not whether an innocent man was wrongly convicted, although there is a strong possibility of his innocence based on available evidence. The undeniable victim in this case is Amanda Cope. The main problem lies in the coercive interrogation tactics employed by the police officers, which ultimately resulted in Cope's confession. These techniques, while deceitful and inappropriate, are legally permissible. Despite their ethical concerns, they do not violate the law. Consequently, Cope's confession could not be dismissed, since these techniques are not illegal. Coupled with the circumstantial evidence presented, his confession alone was sufficient for a conviction of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Before concluding, please consider liking this video if you found it enjoyable, and subscribe to our channel for future content. We also encourage you to share your thoughts on whether you believe Billy was innocent or not in the comment section down below.
This morning, a decades-old murder mystery partially solved.
For 65 years, the story of who would come to be known as America's unknown child has haunted this community.
Vanishing without a trace, countless stories echo of children lost to the abyss. But amidst the haunting tales, one enigma stands in stark contrast. A case that lay dormant for over 6 decades, hiding in a box of anonymity. Known simply as the boy in a box, this perplexing mystery has bewildered generations, leaving no stone unturned in the quest for answers. Yet a glimmer of hope emerges from the depths of the unknown as cutting-edge technology breathes life into his forgotten identity. Prepare to be captivated as we embark on a journey through time, delving into the depths of a chilling enigma that may finally be on the precipice of resolution. This case transports us to the Cold War era in Philadelphia, a city that appeared prosperous on the surface, but held a dark secret. On the evening of February 23, 1957, a student from LaSalle College parked his car near Susquehanna Road and started walking across a vacant lot in the drizzling rain. The young man, whose age was reported differently in various newspapers, had a habit of spying on the residents of a nearby Catholic home for troubled girls. However, on this particular night, his plans took an unexpected turn. As he made his way through the overgrown lot, he stumbled upon a cardboard box. Curiosity got the better of him, and he peered inside, only to find a small dead body tightly squeezed into it. Overwhelmed with fear, he immediately forgot about his original intentions and hurried back to his car. Feeling frightened and ashamed, he decided to confide in his priest the next day, who advised him to contact the police. Following his priest's advice, he called the authorities, but not before making up a story about discovering the box while chasing a rabbit through the tall weeds. The police were notified and dispatched to the lot to investigate. Little did anyone know, this disturbing discovery marked the beginning of a tragic tale that remains unresolved to this day. When the police officers arrived at the empty lot on February 24th, they discovered a large cardboard box lying on its side with one end open. The box had previously contained a baby bassinet from JCPenney. Inside the box was a small boy, his pale body wrapped in a cheap imitation Indian blanket. As they searched the area, they found a man's cap made of royal blue corduroy with a leather strap and buckle on the back, located about 17 feet away from the box. Interestingly, there was a visible path through the weeds and bushes leading from the cap to the cardboard coffin. The boy's body underwent an autopsy conducted by Dr. Joseph Spellman, the chief medical examiner of Philadelphia. According to his report, the boy was estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old. He had blue eyes and light blonde hair that had been unevenly cut, with some areas closely shorn and others almost shaved to the skull. The boy measured 41 inches in height and tragically weighed a mere 30 pounds at the time of his death. Dr. Spellman determined that the cause of death was a brutal beating, evident from the fresh bruises covering the boy's body and face. The examination also revealed older marks, including an L-shaped scar on his chin, a 1-inch surgical scar on the left side of his chest, a round and irregular scar on his left elbow, a well-healed scar near the groin, likely resulting from hernia surgery, and a scar on the left ankle resembling an incision used for accessing veins during a blood transfusion. The medical examiner's report revealed some interesting details about the boy's condition. He had been circumcised, but had no marks indicating that he had received vaccinations, suggesting that he was not enrolled in public school. Additionally, the boy's right palm and the soles of his feet appeared rough and wrinkled, indicating possible exposure to water shortly before or after his death. When subjected to ultraviolet light, his left eye emitted a bright blue fluorescence, indicating recent exposure to a diagnostic dye used in treating chronic eye diseases. Dr. Spellman concluded that the cause of death was head trauma, likely inflicted with a blunt object. However, he couldn't rule out the possibility that pressure had also been applied to the boy's head, possibly during an ill-performed haircut, which may have contributed to his fatal injuries. Detectives dressed the boy and took photographs of his bruised face, hoping to identify him. Unfortunately, as years passed, those hopes gradually faded away. At the start of the investigation, detectives focused their attention on the box that had been used as the boy's makeshift coffin. Originally designed to hold a baby bassinet from JCPenney, it was part of a batch of 12 boxes received on November 27, 1956, and sold between December 3, 1956 and February 16, 1957, at a store in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, the store had no individual sales records, but investigators eventually managed to locate the other 11 bassinets. Despite their efforts, FBI fingerprint experts could not find any usable prints on the box recovered from the vacant lot. The examination of the blanket proved to be quite frustrating. It was made of inexpensive cotton flannel and had recently been washed and repaired using low-quality cotton thread. The blanket had been cut into 2 uneven pieces and then wrapped around the unclothed boy. Analysis at the Philadelphia Textile Institute revealed that it could have been manufactured in either Swannanoa, North Carolina, or Granby, Quebec. However, these blankets were produced in large quantities, making it difficult for the police to determine where it might have been sold. A label inside the blue cap led the police to Robbins Eagle Hat and Cat Company in Philadelphia. The owner, Hannah Robbins, mentioned that the cap was one of 12 made from corduroy remnants before May 1956. She remembered it because initially it didn't have a leather strap, but a few months later a blonde man in his late 20s returned to have a strap sewn on. Although Hannah recognized the man in the photograph shown to her as the boy in the box, she had no record of his name or address. To aid in identifying the child, the Philadelphia police distributed over 10,000 flyers with his picture to police departments in eastern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey. The Philadelphia Gas Works included 200,000 flyers with their customers' gas bills, while the Philadelphia Electric Company, grocery stores, insurance agents, and a pharmacists association also circulated around 300,000 flyers. The case was even featured in an article for the FBI's Law Enforcement Bulletin, but unfortunately no substantial leads were generated. There were individuals out there who knew the boy's identity and what had happened to him, but they remained silent. 5 months after the boy was discovered, he was buried in a burial ground in Philadelphia called the Potter's Field, near the Philadelphia State Hospital at Byberry, which was a mental institution. The detectives working on the case managed to collect enough funds to place a headstone in the somber graveyard, bearing the inscription, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." The case remained dormant and silent for many years, until November 4th, 1998, when the boy in the box was exhumed to extract DNA samples for future comparison with potential relatives. However, a year went by, and the authorities revealed their inability to obtain a satisfactory DNA profile from the boy's remains. Another attempt was made in 2000, this time using the boy's teeth, but it also proved unsuccessful. However, a reported successful attempt was made in April 2001. Although the chances of finding living relatives seem quite slim at this stage, some investigators have maintained a hopeful outlook. In 1999, a forensic artist named Frank Bender, who was a founding member of the VDOC Society, came up with a new idea to potentially solve the case. The VDOC Society is an organization in Philadelphia focused on solving crimes. They are named after Eugene Francois Vidocq, a pioneering 19th century French detective who used criminal psychology to solve unsolved homicide cases. During their meetings, which are attended by forensic professionals, current and former FBI profilers, homicide investigators, scientists, psychologists, prosecutors, and coroners, law enforcement officials from around the world present unsolved cases for review. Bender created a sculpture that he believed closely resembled the boy's father. The case received national attention when it was featured on the television show America's Most Wanted, but unfortunately, no substantial leads emerged. Nonetheless, the efforts to identify the boy persist. Numerous theories have been proposed over the years to solve the boy in the box case, like with most unsolved murders. While most of these theories have been dismissed, two possibilities have generated recent interest. The first theory, which was later disproven, revolved around a foster home located about a mile away from the vacant lot where the boy's body was discovered. In 1960, Remington Bristow, an employee of the medical examiner's office who tirelessly pursued the case until his death in 1993, sought the help of a psychic from New Jersey. The psychic advised him to search for a house that resembled the foster home. Remarkably, when the psychic arrived in the city, she led Bristow directly to the house in question. Refusing to let it go, Bristow conducted his own investigation. During an estate sale at the foster home, he came across a bassinet similar to the one sold at JCPenney. He also noticed blankets hanging on a clothesline that resembled the one used to wrap the boy's body. Bristow believed that the child belonged to the stepdaughter of the foster home's owner. According to his theory, the stepfather and the girl engaged in a sexual relationship, resulting in her pregnancy. The boy was hidden away, but when he accidentally died, the man disposed of his body to prevent the revelation of the girl's unwed motherhood, which was socially stigmatized in 1957. Despite the compelling but indirect evidence, the police couldn't establish any concrete connections between the Foster family and the boy in the box. In 1998, Lieutenant Tom Augustine of the Philadelphia Police, who continues to lead the investigation, along with members of the VDOC Society, interviewed the stepfather and the daughter, who had since married him. The interview seemed to convince them that the family had no involvement in the case. Additionally, a DNA test ruled out the stepdaughter as the boy's mother, leading to the closure of the investigation into the foster home theory. Another theory surfaced in February 2002, shared by a woman known as M. She claimed that her abusive mother had bought the unidentified boy, referred to as Jonathan, from his birth parents in the summer of 1954. According to her account, the boy endured severe physical and sexual abuse for 2.5 years. Allegedly, her mother flew into a rage and killed the boy when he vomited in the bathtub. M stated that she then cut the boy's hair unevenly, explaining his ragged haircut, and disposed of his body in a secluded vacant lot. During the body's removal from the trunk, a passing male driver stopped to offer help, but they ignored him and he eventually drove away. This account aligned with confidential testimony given by a male witness in 1957. The police found the story quite plausible, but were skeptical due to M's history of mental illness. Neighbors who had access to the house also denied the existence of a young boy there, considering M's claims as baseless. On December 8, 2022, Philadelphia Police Department Commissioner Danielle Outlaw made an important announcement regarding the case. She revealed that the boy who was found dead in 1957 had been identified as Joseph Augustus Zarelli.
In his very short life, it was apparent that this child experienced horrors that no one should ever be subjected to.
Commissioner Outlaw stated that the community had always remembered the story of this child and that his memory was never forgotten. Using genetic genealogy, Zarelli's DNA was uploaded to genetic databases, leading detectives to find relatives on his mother's side. Through birth records, they also discovered the identity of his father. It was revealed that Zarelli's mother had 3 other children. However, many questions about Zarelli's life and death still remain unanswered. To respect the privacy of his living siblings, the police have chosen not to disclose the names of Zarelli's parents at this time. They also refrained from speculating on who might have been responsible for his death, but mentioned that they have suspicions. Commissioner Outlaw emphasized that the investigation is still active, and they seek the public's assistance in uncovering more details about this child's story. She noted that while this announcement closes one chapter, it opens a new one in the ongoing investigation. Although the case remains unresolved, it brings some comfort to know that the boy's identity has been discovered, and he can now receive a proper burial. What are your thoughts on this? Do you believe Martha's account? Share your thoughts in the comments below.